See you. We're back in a new year. We're all glad 2020 is over. How have you been doing?
Great. It's so great to see you again. I've been missing these conversations. This is great to finally get back and able to do these again.
Lee, I really want to get into your new edition of Architecting for Scale, but for those people that don't know you, could give me, I mean, if you're a DevOps person, they use a tool that your team created, across the globe, but maybe just give a little quick background on some of your adventures leading up to, working with companies around the globe, kind of seeing the challenges they're having around architecting.
Sure. I've been in the industry for a long time, for about 33 years, but I was fortunate enough to spend 7 years at Amazon. At a time starting at Amazon when they were relatively, by today's comparisons, a relatively small company. This is 2005, and they were just retail website and a bunch of small categories like books and electronics and music and just a few of those categories. And I helped drive the team that moved from a monolithic application for the retail website to a service-based architecture. I did that. I built their first download store, software download store. And then I moved to AWS, where I built the Elastic Beanstalk service.
Yes, something that everybody's familiar with, and everybody uses it. I know on my team they all use Elastic Beanstalk, so very very familiar with it. And then you and I both worked at one of those, I guess they call it West Coast unicorns. That you were there obviously much earlier. That had a tremendous growth story, wonderful people. But one of the things that we really got to do, which was great, is work with kind of the Fortune 500 and Global 100 and see the various problems. And I think that was one of your inspirations for kind of the first edition of the book, Architecting for Scale. Maybe if you could share a little bit about that.
Definitely. Yeah, what I discovered was there's a lot of companies that had growing pains when it came to scaling their applications. They would just as their application would begin to grow to a size where they would become successful, would be the same point in time when they would start running into availability problems, and they would make their customers dissatisfied and lose customers, et cetera. And it's always discouraging to hear about what at Amazon we called the Johnny Carson effect. This was when one product would suddenly become very, very popular and it just wasn't available anymore because of how popular it was.
Right.
Johnny Carson died and his videotapes became unavailable because they were the number one selling product for a short period of time. And it's amazing what can happen with websites when they become popular and successful, and some of the scaling problems they ran into. And it was that experience that led me to realize that other companies needed to solve some of these same problems, and led me to writing the book Architecting for Scale.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's very interesting, when you've worked with companies, and you and I visited and work with a lot of different companies, but it's a different company, but often the problems are very similar, and even the pattern to solve it is very similar, but they just don't have the formula. So my guess is with Architecting for Scale, what you kind of tried to do is put that formula into a book that everybody can access. Is that fair?
Exactly. Yeah. What I really wanted to do is I didn't want to build, the engineer's Bible to scaling, and I didn't want to build the Scale for Dummies book. I wanted something a little bit more in the middle there. I wanted something that was high level overview that gave companies kind of the guidance they needed for what they should be doing, but without being the unapproachable book that was just so deep that nobody could understand the details except for those few engineers who could read the code. So I wanted something kind of in the middle there. And so what I came up with was a format for the book that is really designed for for the managers, for the up to the CXO, CTO level within the organization, to give an idea for the types of things that are important for building a scalable organization, not just a scalable code base, but a scalable organization, and give them the tools to help their team, do the further research necessary in order to become a better organization. By becoming a better organization, they can build a better product with better processes, and therefore have the scaling that they need with the availability that customers require.
It makes a lot of sense. If somebody went out and purchased it, is there, like, if you think about like the top three things that they'll probably come away with that can help their organization, is there any typical things that kind of, as they look at the formula, like these are the things I could bring home to my company?
Absolutely. There's a few different things. I think um, uh, one of the one of the big things that I talk about in the book that I think is kind of a cornerstone for the book, even though it's not a ton of the pages in the book, but it's kind of a cornerstone for the book, is something that I call STOSA, single team oriented service architecture, and it's all about how do you organize your team, your development organization, your operations organization, so that you can build a scalable organization to build a scalable application. And by scaling, I'm not talking about just the number of people accessing the application, but how large and complex the application is. Because as your company becomes successful and you get more customers, your application also tends to get more complicated and more complex as your business becomes more complex. And it's so easy to find mind traps for where you end up building in bottlenecks that prevent you from doing things that are necessary and can lead to major problems in the application. But by being able to follow these processes and procedures for how you organize your team, and the mindset that they go through as you form the teams and design what the two teams are responsible for. By doing all of that, you can build an organization that can keep a large complex application that's growing in scale immensely as your organization grows, and keep it up and running and keep it scaling for your customer needs a lot easier. And it's as much about mindset as it is about code processes. So we talk about patterns for writing code in the book, absolutely. But mostly what I focus on is here's things organizationally you should do in order to make your organization better, and the ways your organization should function in order to make things work better.
Yeah, no, it's so true. I think it's an old saying, right? People, process, and technology, and usually technology is the easiest part. It's that people, that process, the right mindset. Um, in the second edition, what are some of the new updates that you've added to the book?
So it's actually a complete reorganization. What I learned from the first edition is I had a series of topics that I thought were important, but there wasn't really a structure into how to, that flowed as well through the book for how to go from one step to another. So the new version is structured into a series of 5 tenets that are each focused on a specific area of scalability or availability or process management, et cetera. And and I organize the information in each of those separate tenants. I'd say about 20% of the content is brand new content, and about 80% of it is restructured, reorganized, represented in a way that's easier to understand and clearer to understand for the intended audience. And so, but about 20% of it is new material, things that I've discovered, once I came out with the book, and I went, I was very fortunate. Once the first edition of the book went out, I went on, a 4-year tour of various companies, of going to trade shows to do book signings, talking to people about their problems, and learning. And I learned a lot more about the types of problems that people were running into, because they were much more forthright to want to talk to me and said, "Oh, I'm the author. I wrote the book. Well, let me tell you my experiences." And so I got a lot of those stories that came through too, and some of those are those experiences are included in this edition of the book as well. Overall, it's a much better organized and more content in the book.
That's great. Well, yeah, I would love to maybe take a couple of chapters and just kind of go back and forth. I know we've talked in the case in the back, in the past, around change control. How do you set up things like that? Risk registers. How do you manage the risks? Whether it be tech debt or underinvestment. So that might be some fun topics if it's okay to do. I know you often work with companies now. If someone wanted to find you, what website should they go to?
I'm actually running my own consulting company right now called Atchison Technology, and you can reach me at atchisontechnology.com. Or of course, you can always go to leeatchison.com, and that'll refer you there as well too. And if you like some of the other things that I write in the book, I also do a blog and a podcast, and all those are available off of the leeatchison.com website as well.
That's great. So let's pick some chapters from the book and come back and discuss it. It looks like a lot of fun. Talk soon, Lee.
Nice talking to you again. Bye-bye.
Bye.